You know the feeling. You've been sitting in front of an empty document for 40 minutes, and the cursor just blinks, steady, rhythmic, almost mocking. You're not watching a show. You're not scrolling through your feed. It's like you're just existing next to the task. You can feel it there, but you can't bring yourself to touch it. Or here's another one. You go to bed at 1 a.m. thinking, tomorrow is the day I start. And that tomorrow feels so real, so full of potential, until morning comes. And then it's the exact same story all over again. Coffee, phone, just one more little escape. People around you think procrastination is just laziness. They think if you could just pull yourself together, get a grip, or show a little more willpower, everything would be fine. But you know better. Laziness is when you don't care. This is different. This is when you care too much. And that's exactly what paralyzes you. This video isn't about generic advice like eat the frog first thing in the morning. This is about what's actually happening inside your head when you find yourself stuck, unable to start, over and over again. Here's the first thing we need to get straight. Procrastination isn't a time management problem. It's an emotion regulation problem. When you put something off, a term paper, a doctor's appointment, an email you should have sent weeks ago, your brain isn't being stupid, and it's not showing weakness. It's protecting you. It senses a threat and pulls you away from it. That threat might be the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, or the fear that you'll pour your heart into it and it still won't be enough. Or, what's even harder to face, the fear that you'll do everything right and it still won't change a thing. Deep in your brain, there's a structure called the amygdala, a tiny almond-shaped knot that triggers your fight or flight response. And to your amygdala, there is zero difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a project deadline that threatens your self-esteem. The signal is exactly the same. Danger. Run. So you run. Not into the woods, but to YouTube, to the fridge, or into an endless scroll. Because it's safe there. No one is judging you there. You don't have to take risks. Psychologists call this emotional avoidance. And it works, but only in the short term. While you're watching a funny video, the anxiety backs off a bit, but the task hasn't gone anywhere. And when you finally look back at it, it feels even heavier. Because now, it's wrapped in shame. I wasted time again. I failed again. What is wrong with me? That's how procrastination becomes a cycle rather than just a bad habit. Anxiety leads to avoidance, which brings temporary relief, followed by shame, which creates even more anxiety. The loop closes. And this is where you need to hit pause and tell yourself something honest. If you grew up in an environment where mistakes weren't tolerated, where you were only praised for the final result and never for the effort, this coping mechanism didn't form because you were weak. It formed because you learned how to survive. And right now, your brain just doesn't realize that the rules of the game have changed. Procrastination rarely looks dramatic. It doesn't crash through the door. It just quietly seeps into every corner of your day. Suddenly, you're washing a plate that's already clean, just to avoid opening your laptop. You're rearranging things on your desk, moving them from side to side, as if organizing the outside world will somehow fix the chaos on the inside. You open the file you need, stare at it for 20 seconds, and close it again, because looking at it is easier than actually starting. Over time, the hidden costs start piling up. It's not just about the lost hours. You lose something much deeper, your sense of being someone you can trust. You stop believing your own promises. You tell yourself, I'll do it on Sunday. But deep down, you already know you won't. And that knowledge sits in the back of your mind like a low, constant hum of white noise. Your relationships suffer too, often in ways that aren't obvious. You put off a difficult but necessary conversation. You avoid booking that doctor's appointment, even though something has been bothering you for months. You delay calling a friend who's going through a hard time because you don't know what to say, so it feels easier to wait for the right moment. But the right moment never comes, and the distance between you grows. One of the most insidious traps of procrastination is the illusion of preparation. You aren't doing nothing. You're reading articles on the topic, watching tutorials, making outlines, buying a beautiful new planner. It feels like forward momentum, but you're just running on a hamster wheel because the actual starting point, the part that terrifies you, never happens. And perhaps the most painful part is that you start building your identity around this pattern. I'm just that kind of person. I always put things off. It stops being a behavior and becomes a label. Once that happens, changing it becomes twice as hard, because now, fixing the problem feels like a threat to who you are. If everything we've talked about hits home, you've already taken a massive first step. You've stopped calling it laziness, and that's not a small shift, it's everything. Because once you realize that procrastination is a stress response, not a character flaw, you get a completely different toolkit to handle it. The first strategy that actually works is lowering the stakes. Don't tell yourself, I have to sit down and write this entire report. Instead say, I'm just going to open the document and write one sentence. Literally one. Your brain isn't resisting the work itself. It's resisting the sheer scale of the threat. Shrink the threat, and the resistance melts away. Neuroscientists call this lowering the activation energy. You can just call it starting small, and that's perfectly okay. The second step is separating your work from your worth. A terrible first draft doesn't make you a terrible person. An unfinished project is just an unfinished project, not a final verdict on your intelligence. It sounds simple, but most people need to repeat this to themselves like a mantra because the inner critic is incredibly persuasive. The third step, and this is probably the most counterintuitive, is self-compassion instead of self-flagellation. Research consistently shows that people who beat themselves up over procrastinating end up doing it more, not less. Why? Because shame is just another uncomfortable emotion your brain wants to escape from. And you already know what that escape looks like. When you tell yourself, okay, I got distracted again. It happens. Let's try one more time. You're not letting yourself off the hook. You're simply creating a safe space where progress is actually possible. Finally, look at what's driving the specific task you're avoiding. Sometimes it's the fear of criticism. Sometimes, as strange as it sounds, it's the fear of success. And sometimes, it's a deep disconnect between what you are doing and who you actually want to be. Procrastination isn't always a weakness. Sometimes, it's a signal. It's your brain saying, something is wrong here, and we need to look at it. The fact that you made it to the end of this video means something. Not because you completed a lesson or got some tools, but because you allowed yourself to sit with this, to look at it honestly, without running away. Procrastination is one of the loneliest experiences in the world. To the outside world, it looks like you're doing nothing. But on the inside, it's a constant, exhausting battle with yourself. And most of the people you see around you, the productive, organized, confident ones, know this exact battle too. They just don't talk about it out loud. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are a human being with a highly intelligent, slightly outdated defense system running in the background. And it can be retrained. Not overnight, and not from a single video, but gradually, with patience, and with a little kindness toward yourself. Start with something small today. Don't try to change your entire life. Just take one step. Open that document. Write one sentence. Make that one call. Not because you need to be a productivity machine, but because you deserve to live without that constant, heavy weight of guilt. It's possible. It really is.